be the one to break it to you, but sex education of the past failed us. Because birds and bees, they don't fuck. Welcome to Birds and Bees Don't Fuck, a podcast where we learn exactly how bad our formative sex education, or lack thereof, really was. I'm your host, Arielle Zadok. I'm an intimacy coordinator and sexologist. My guest today is a sexual wellness educator. I'm having a day, but we're going to keep going for it. My guest today is a sexual wellness educator and novelty specialist. Welcome to the show, Nathan Hammerle.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for bearing with me today.
Absolutely. I think it was great. I would have had probably twice as many mistakes.
Improvising. We keep going. We keep flowing, which I feel like is a really good point about sex too. Like sex is messy and weird and we're going to fuck up and just like keep going.
Absolutely. That's how you make it memorable.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like, I feel like people are so scared to like giggle and play and like fuck up during sex that it's like, no, this is a weird thing that none of us were ever taught how to do. We're going to do weird stuff. And also bodies do weird things.
Absolutely. And I'm one of those people that have made those mistakes.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man. Do you want to share any?
Yeah, we'll get there.
I gotta warm you up. See, we have to ease into the foreplay, the foreplay of talking. So we met at a sexpo, and that was actually the first expo that I had been to in the sexual wellness space. So that was like super fun for me. So thanks for being there and doing what you do.
Thank you for coming in and talking to me there and inviting me on. It was fantastic getting to know you there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were working for a brand at the time that's like really in the kink space. And,
yes.
And we don't, however much you want to share about that. So tell me a little bit about what it was like or what it's been like for you working and like focusing in the kink space versus just like the vanilla sex space, because there's the sexual wellness space. And then there's like this whole other layer of kink and BDSM and like taboo and dancing in those areas, which is just like, if you think talking about sex is bad, talk about kink is even harder.
Yeah. And it was it was very interesting for me coming into it because I have kink background myself. So I participate in a lot of those more kinky activities. And I've been in different play spaces with different clubs. Like, hello,
here's Ruby. She's like, y'all talking about kink? What's up? How you doing?
But like, I've been at different clubs. I've been in different smaller local communities, especially since COVID sort of popped up out of nowhere and made everything change very quickly for all of us. But I was already familiar with sort of that product type, with the kink atmosphere in the community and what they were looking for and helping sort of guide those conversations within an organization where they were aware of it, but they didn't really have that first, like, I guess, basis point to intersect into the larger community. So it was very rewarding for me to just be someone that felt like it was helping them learn more than what they already knew. And they already knew a ton on their own. So it was very rewarding just in general. So, but it was a lot of fun. And my start was actually within sexual wellness education. So I didn't even really have the more vanilla novelties at the beginning of things. I just hopped right into the deep end.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of fun with that.
Because you were already personally in the kink space and then you became an educator, or were you an educator and then found yourself in a kink in the kinky space and then kind of merged those two worlds?
It all kind of happened at the same time.
As it does.
Yeah. So
exploration.
Exactly. And for me, it all sort of spanned throughout. I guess we're going to kind of get into it in the show too, where it's like from my start just being a sexually active individual to how I started to journey down to my current career path. So it was a fantastic little tidbit that even I'm like, wow, that happened. I can't believe that happened 2 years ago. If you asked me where I'd be like, I have no idea, not even here. So, but it's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding nonetheless.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, I love having the sexperts on because it's always interesting to find how all of us found our way into sexuality as a profession and as something that we are choosing to spend our lives on. Because like I said before, it's just it's not an easy path. I mean, doing anything outside of the norm, like hello kink, is going to be a harder path. But then dealing with sex, like I said, like that's, we all know we get censored, we get banned. It is such a challenge to figure out even how to talk about just like how periods work. We can't even talk about that. And now we're going to talk about flogging and, like puppy play. And like, it's so hard. It's so, so hard in
Yeah.
terms of like how we get censored and how people react to it and getting people comfortable for the conversations, not necessarily us having the conversations. Cause for us, like
It's another Tuesday.
yeah, it's another Tuesday. Like, oh, okay, you're talking about getting cum in your eye. Okay. Yeah. That's Tuesday at noon. That's fine. This is
Yeah.
normal. This
That's
is
my lunch
normal.
conversation.
Literally. Literally. And by the way, you will get pink eye if you get cum in your eye. So do make sure that you wash it out, please. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about just, or whatever you want to share, but just like your own entrance into the kink space, especially as a man, because I think we kind of get like a lot of people will get pigeonholed into like, this is your gender. So this is like, especially when we're talking about like a dom sub dynamic, because
Mhm.
that's not the case. And knowing nothing about you personally or anything like that, but we can kind of talk about, yeah, just wherever that goes. But that's, it's, yeah, things can be gendered in that space too when you're thinking dom sub. Or at
Yeah.
least when people enter into it, let's say that, because you get a lot of dudes that are like, I'm a dom. And you're like, bro, you don't know fucking anything about that shit. So let's calm down.
Yeah. All those assumptions that are made from the beginning are just entirely false because kink as itself or in and of itself is just entirely customizable for
Mhm.
anyone. And I'll admit, even going into it with my first sort of foray into things, it was with the assumption that, yes, I was 100% dominant, everything like that. And the real reason why I actually got into the kink space as a whole was more so not really my own personal interest in doing some of these things, but more so wanting to do it for a partner.
Mm.
And it wasn't one individual partner. I'm just the type of person that doesn't like to come across an obstacle that I can't sort of tackle head on, for lack of better phrasing.
Louder for the men in the back. So you're telling me that you went and sought out education so that you could be a better lover and a better partner for whoever you're going to be with. So the labor was not on them.
I tried.
I'm just saying that's the thing to do, people. And I love having a real life example of that right here. So please carry on.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I didn't really know where it was going to lead me, whether it be obviously with my career, but I didn't really know where it was going to lead me in my personal life. And it's one of those things where even today, there are a very limited amount of things within kink that I'm like, oh yeah, this is my bread and butter. This is what I want to do. And this is what I can consider my specialty with other individuals that I play with. But I really just got started and hey, I know these things exist. I know people are interested and want to do them. They might not be like stepping up to the plate to say, "Hey, I want you to do this right now." But having that expertise and that knowledge of how to do it safely, how to have those conversations was really important to me. And just, okay, if I ever came across this with any partner, how does that get addressed? How do I have those conversations? How do I make sure that they know that they are safe and taken care of in these situations? And really just making it a wholesome experience for everyone involved.
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things that people who don't know about the kink world or make assumptions or again want to just like flaunt around the word that they're a dom or like want to be a dom, the safety is the foundation of a scene.
Mm.
Full stop. Safety is the foundation of any successful kink scene. And you have to know how to do that safely. So you
Mhm.
have to know how to tie somebody safely. If you're going to bound somebody in any way, you have to know how to do that safely. Even if you're going to give somebody a ball gag, you
Mhm.
have to know how to do that safely because some materials people are going to be allergic to
Yeah.
or are going to be uncomfortable for the jaw. Not every ball size is going to be the right size for the right jaw. And
Mhm.
you could cause long-term pain and damage and maybe give somebody TMJ. Like it's, I mean, I'm going like way deep into the depths of it, but like,
Well, no, and
but
those
it's
were
also valid.
Yeah, and those were a lot of the conversations that I had, especially with my former employer, where it was, hey, these are things that I'm noticing creep up even in the, for lack of better phrasing, dark depths of the community
Yeah.
where it's not really being talked about on a front loaded like conversation just yet. And so having that familiarity, having that advantage of knowing what those conversations were, how people need to have products that can adapt to them.
Mm,
That was something that I felt was very beneficial, just to have that conversation in any real space within the novelty industry.
mm.
But within the kink space, it became integral to make sure that safety was at the forefront of everything.
Oh yeah, and I think also with pleasure products and novelty items like across the board, and let's just be clear, we're talking about sex toys. With all of those types of products, what we see is that people will buy things because it's shiny and it seems fun and it's new and it's like, ooh, this is exciting.
Mhm.
Have no fucking clue what they're doing, and it either sits in the box for years, or it comes out once and maybe it's never used, or it's used once and it's used the wrong way. And in all of those scenarios, then people are like, oh, I don't want to. It was a waste of money. That thing was really expensive. It's such trash, blah, 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 blah. But really, the missing piece is the education on
Mhm.
how to use this. What does it do? How to use it safely? And what are the other more creative ways that you can use these things, especially with some of the less kinky toys. Well, actually, no, even with the kink, definitely with the kinky toys, but with everything, really, it's like, what are the different ways that I can use this tool? Because this is a tool and maybe it's meant to do this one thing, like a clitoral stimulator, for example. Like you can look at a clitoral stimulator that generally has, a lot of them will just have like a small opening that you can, it's, you have to be pretty precise because you'll put it right over the clit. But where else does that feel good? Does it feel good on nipples? Does
Mhm.
it feel good on the head of a penis? Does it feel good on the frenulum? Does it feel good on balls? Does it feel good on ears? Like, how can we get creative with these tools? Because then it's not just this one thing that can be used in this one way. And some kinky toys can be a little bit different. And like, there's not too many ways you can use handcuffs because you need to cuff them on something.
Mhm.
But like, how can we use these things in a creative way? How can we get more creative in bed, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth for it, because that's something that I'm really trying to push for in this industry, is just the communication and conversation of the wide variety of how you can use these products.
Mm.
Like you mentioned with the clitoral stimulator, with like the air pulse technology,
Hmm.
that is currently being adapted from multiple different companies in different ways, where like Womanizer and Satisfier were two of the main companies that used
Yeah.
it. And now you're seeing companies, so Womanizer is owned by WowTech, and
Hmm.
WowTech also does ArcWave. And so the first ArcWave that came out was using that same technology for the frenulum and a
Yeah.
stroker. And I was like, see, this is exactly what I've been trying to tell people for so long, how to find new
Exactly.
ways to adapt.
I mean, that's gotta feel good on your booty hole too.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
who doesn't want a little Yeah, I mean, there's just, and that's the essence of sex and sexuality for me, and really just like if you're looking at the chakra system too, is tapping into that creativity and that vitality. And so I really think that with all of these things, we just have to get a little bit more creative and see like, how can this one thing work better for my body?
Mhm.
Because just because something is made for XYZ doesn't mean that on your specific body, it might not feel better being used for ABC or whatever the case is. So,
Mhm.
there's a certain level of creativity. And that kind of goes back to the beginning of the conversation where it's like, you're going to fuck up. Who cares? Like, as long as you're doing it safely and you are, you know, not apologize. Well, yeah, apologizing, but like
Mhm.
repairing anything that happened. And that's where the aftercare comes in and all of that. So, yeah, get creative. Don't
Yeah.
be scared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you said, mistakes are going to happen. And even I'm the kind of person that can admit, yes, I've made mistakes in my past as
Mhm.
well. And learning from them, having those conversations to repair them, whether it be just, as you said, like have that apology and be sincere with it and everything as well. And just making sure that those mistakes are still being addressed
Mhm.
after the fact. And understanding that, hey, mistake can be as light as, oh, well, I may have wrapped with a flogger across your arm and it impacted just a little bit too hard, and that took us completely out of the scene.
Mm, yeah.
Or if there is maybe a consent violation or something like that. And that is where things become more long term in terms of having those conversations and getting that acknowledgement to what happened out there.
Yeah. I think, those who practice kink safely, it's a really great tool for learning how to have those conversations because intrinsically talking is a part of it if you're doing it safe and right and all that. Because I've definitely engaged in kink where I'm like, there was no conversation about this. This feels like we're in a scene and we didn't talk about this as a scene, and here we are. So, not everyone is up there, and, it's a global conversation that we need to have just about sex in general, but definitely in the kink space, and doing a scene and doing it properly. Because to be fair, a lot of people want to get into the kinky scene, but aren't used to having sex conversations. So it's even harder. How do I now have a conversation about a scene? Like, what does that even look like? I've never even had a conversation about sexual health before. So, we can be asking a lot out of people, but it is normalizing those conversations. And again, for those who are practicing safe kink and BDSM, that aftercare and the conversations before, during, and after are happening. And these are the kinds of tools that help you outside the bedroom.
Yes.
Because you're going to learn how to repair inside and outside the bedroom. And it's so, so important.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And just having those transferable skills can, even just outside of interpersonal relationships, you can find different ways how they intersect to just loving yourself, loving whether it be family, or just having those communicate or those conversations with them to make things easy and light, and still feeling like what needs to be addressed is being addressed.
Yeah. I think the repair conversations and the acknowledgement conversations, they don't need to be this like big, hard, heavy thing, but we're taught that conflict is bad. It's like a societal idea that like conflict is bad and pain is bad, and it's not. Like it's not comfortable, but things don't have to be comfortable. Growth is not comfortable. Growth is literally your bones breaking and stretching, and like it's a painful experience. Any growth is going to be painful. So to expect sex conversations to be like super comfortable and good time. I mean, I love talking about that shit. Doesn't mean that it's not hard and that I'm not hurting sometimes, but like, let's get into it. But yeah, I think we have to just break this idea that these conversations need to be so like heavy and loaded and hard. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be comfortable, but it's going to be fucking great if you get through it.
Yeah. And I'll even admit too, where even I struggle with that sometimes, because like with my upbringing, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, it's just the way that coming from the Midwest, you're taught sex is something entirely different than other places. And it was a lot more sacred, a lot more intimate for just a single partner, and married once, it's with that partner for your entire life. And so those weren't things that were really educated at all to me, like having those healthy conversations. And that's stuff that I sort of had to learn on my own. And I'll admit, like I said, I still struggle with them on many occasions in some cases.
Sure, yeah.
Where it's like, okay, yeah, you need to have these conversations, but there's those mental blocks that you need to come over, and still working on it.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, we all are. I'm always working on that too. And I'm not someone that necessarily has, at this point in my life and my journey, a hard time having the conversations or navigating those conversations. I'm quite good at that. Like it comes easy to me at this point because I've just been doing them for so long. But I will say it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't struggle to have my needs met or say what my needs are, because I'm oftentimes just thinking so much about the other person. And I'm like, well, I don't need to put that on them. Or, because the relationship is only like this, then I don't really have a place to say that. But it's like, actually you do. You fucking do. So like, even I am good at having conversations, but also those are my gaps and those are my little holes. And I'm sure once I get through that one, then another one's going to pop up. And then when I get through that one, another one is going to pop up. So it's like, none of us, even those of us who work in this field or are therapists or whatever, like you can never be an expert truly and perfect at the human experience, because humans are always growing and changing and everything is contextual. So you could be so good at the conversation, maybe in a scene, but like with your mom, you're not, it's because it's all contextual. And that's like the hardest conversations, familial conversations. That's like, we don't need to get into that one.
It's funny. I've actually, over the last few years, as I've sort of traversed this industry, those conversations have become the easiest.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it's like, oh, okay, you know what I do. We just get over it at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you kind of have to, right? Like my mom does not like it, but it's like, so sorry. Like, you raised me. Like, this is your kid, honey.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think you raised, but like, you're a part of this.
Yeah.
You did this to yourself. Even though I'm so different from her, but like oftentimes we are.
Mhm.
So where did you grow up? Midwest, but where?
I grew up in Central Ohio.
Okay, Ohio.
Lucky me.
Yeah. So Central Ohio, was it a religious town?
No, so
Okay.
Columbus, Ohio, Central Ohio area
Okay.
is state capital. So it's one of those, because it's the capital of the state. It's a big city. It's, I don't even know really how to describe it. It's one of those things where you have a little bit of everything
Mm-hmm.
surrounding you. And because I was in one of the suburbs of that area, it was a little bit of everything. You
Mm-hmm.
had the mix of individuals who were a lot more like liberal identity or a lot more conservative identity. My folks were a lot more conservative in theirs.
Mm.
Um, so it was a lot of almost conflicting ideas in
Mm.
that case. So, yeah. And for me, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. My experience with sex ed was almost non-existent to a degree.
Mm.
No, I feel like that's not even right, because I remember like back in fifth grade, for example, we had the infamous video
Yeah.
where everyone saw it. They had the boys in one area, the girls in one area, because
Were you
at
in the
that,
same room though?
well,
Or
I don't know at this point
because we
that's
get a
been
lot of
blocked
separate,
out.
yeah. We get a lot of separate. You said area, so I was like, was it the same room? Did they keep you in the same room?
I think it
Who
may have been
knows?
separate
Okay.
rooms, but they had us separated in that way, and then they had a switch, and we had to watch for the boys had to watch the girls' video, the girls had to watch boys' video, and then that was
Wait,
just
what were
it.
the two videos? I only know the
One that
one
was only
video.
about puberty for biologically male individuals growing
Okay.
up, and the other one was for biologically female. So we
Okay.
had to flip and watch the other one.
Oh, okay. So did you see the birth video?
Actually, I did not. That was one of
Oh,
the
so
few things
that's
I
the
did
one.
not
Okay,
see.
that's the one that I thought you were talking about because that's
Okay.
like the infamous video. So okay, so you actually got a little puberty for both of them. So that's good. I want to say that's even impressive.
I mean, let's just say it didn't leave a lasting impression, so I
Yeah,
don't really
yeah.
know how beneficial it was. I just remember everyone having so much anxiety about this video because no one knew what
Yeah.
they expected. No one told you about it.
Mm.
And of course, all the older kids were telling you that it was this big, grotesque thing that you had to be worried about. And everyone just sort of walked out like, are we supposed to be worried about this? And
Yeah.
so it was almost more fear mongering from the older kids playing a trick on us than
Yeah.
anything like that.
Oh
So,
no.
but it was a weird
Sex ed
instance.
bullying.
Yeah, kind of. Um, but yeah, it was a weird time for that. And then I didn't have anything to my, or at least that I remember throughout middle school. And then in high school, all of our health programs, at least for my district, were online. So
Really?
we had to take, we had, for me, it was our gym teacher.
Oh,
And that I've got a funny story about afterwards. But for me,
gym
it was my
teachers
gym
on Zoom.
teacher. And, well, no, we were in a physical
Oh, you
classroom,
were in a
but
physical
it was
class.
a computer lab.
Oh, because we did start having computer labs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was they all had us in this room, and it was I can't remember the service, um, but it was just dedicated to health subjects. And so we went through and we talked about like everything from drugs and alcohol to puberty and other health topics, mental health. And then we had one lesson that only occurred throughout one day, and that was for sexual wellness. And it was this is a list of STIs. Can you match them to some of their symptoms or
Oh
whatever?
God.
And even that wasn't really true the way
No,
that
it's
all of
not
them
because
went.
there's
Because
so much overlap. And
exactly,
also, most people don't have any symptoms at all. So, was that even an option? I
it
don't
was
think
not.
so.
But it was bizarre. And I remember thinking at the time that it was bizarre too. Just,
Yeah.
we can't, it's not a conversation. Now, granted, when I was going into high school and I knew that or that I had to take health class, I think it was sophomore or junior year or something like that. My sister was like, make sure you watch Mean Girls for that scene. And the whole don't have sex, you will get pregnant and die, or
Oh my
whatever the
God. I
quote
don't
was.
remember that scene at all, but like, yeah, that's pretty much most people's experiences.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, so is that what's actually going to happen? Or are they just going to take us into a gymnasium or something? Or what's the story there? And then it ends up being online. And I don't know. Let's just say expectations were not met for what even I was expecting back then.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, nothing really happened after that. And I think I was confused by it
Yeah.
because I was confused by knowing that these things exist, that they need to be talked about, and then they weren't. And I was the one that wasn't afraid to ask questions. So like when
Yeah.
I was having, because the late high school is when I started becoming sexually active.
Hmm.
And so when there were, you had a former guest that acknowledged it a certain way. I can't remember, for replacement for ED, the terminology.
Oh, erectile oh fuck. What's it? Unreliability. Yeah.
Yeah, unreliability.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's what they use, but that's what I have tried to shift into, because that's really, it's not a dysfunction. Your body's literally doing what it's supposed to.
yeah,
It's like, it's just not as reliable as you thought it was when you were fucking 15.
yeah. And at that point, when I was having those sort of issues, and maybe that mental block or whatever it was at the time, I had questions. I was like, okay, I'm in my late teens. I'm being told this shouldn't be happening to me. So I went to my gym teacher, who was also my health teacher at that point,
Yeah.
and he's like, I have no idea what
I
to
have
tell
never
you right
experienced
now.
that in my life, child. I don't know what you're talking about. Gotta go.
Yeah.
Like,
And I remember the moment I asked him to, just like the wide eye, like I should not be having this conversation right now.
yeah.
And I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was just like a student going to a teacher, like general question.
Which it is. Fair
Exactly.
enough. It is.
Yeah. And it was an interesting time. And that was my first sort of idea that, oh, okay, well, I didn't have a word for it at the time. And now I know that it's because I'm demisexual. And
Yeah.
it's, I didn't have that connection with the person that I was with at the time, and
Yeah.
this, that, whatever. So it became a interesting sort of transition for me. And
Hmm.
then like with my English course, I did, we had to do an essay for a debate sort of thing. And I did it on why you need sex ed in America
Fuck
and everything.
yeah.
And I remember at the time it was, granted, it's still not very high, but I think it was either 13 or 17. I don't know why those two numbers are standing out to me. States were required by law to be medically accurate in their sexual
I
wellness.
think it's only up to 18 now.
Yeah, I was
Maybe
about to say.
at best it's 18. I don't think it's above that, because I think in terms of how many states are required to teach sex ed at all,
Mm,
it's somewhere between like 21 or 27, maybe.
I think
Something
so.
maybe it's 27 is sticking out, but I'm like, that feels high even. And I think it's only 18 that are required to have it be medically accurate. But now, I feel like that's changing every day, which is why it's so important to vote. Vote, 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 vote.
Yes.
Always vote. It matters. And look at where your money goes too. Like, not to get on a horse, but like money talks. Like,
Oh, yeah.
look at, I'm not always the best at this, but I do try to pay attention to where what companies my money is going to, and what those companies are funding, because the laws that we're seeing are funded by corporations. So
Absolutely.
it matters where your money goes if you want to protect, sex education and reproductive rights, and, LGBTQIA plus rights and all that stuff. And I'll get off my horse. Please do carry on.
Oh, I'm right up there on there with you.
We're gonna come to your town on a horse.
I'll have a soapbox as a backpack, so that way when we
Yes.
get off, we're still on something.
Perfect. Perfect.
But I remember doing that essay, and I was the one person. I don't know if, at least there weren't any rumors at the time, but I don't know if there are whispers of why is this kid so interested in sex right now, and why is he
Yeah.
talking about this all the time. But that also, to a degree, with some friends of mine, helped them feel comfortable coming to me with questions,
Yeah, that's what
which
happens.
I'm like, I don't know all the answers, and I still don't know all the answers, but I'm happy to help, like, give you a resource that I found that might answer them for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became a whole transitional phase as I went into college and everything too. And then it was all seedlings that brought me to where I am now.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting time. And for me, I didn't know that that was the career path I was going to take. I was originally going to school for 4 years to be a high school history teacher.
Oh,
So
wow.
very different for me now.
Very. I went to school originally to be an English teacher because I didn't want to be a starving actor. And then, like, a week in, I was like, I don't want to be a teacher,
Mhm.
or at least not in that way. And so that's when I went into production. But, like, everything kind of comes full circle, because I do like teaching. I love teaching. And yeah, it's funny where we start out, but yeah, it's not surprising that you started out wanting to do history teaching.
Yeah. Well, I've got a funny theory that a friend of mine actually popped in my head one day, and it was very few, at least back in college, very few education majors that we knew were not kinky.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
we're like, why is there this intersection? And we still don't have an answer for it, but
Power dynamics.
it's gotta be. But I don't know. It's funny just to think about
Yeah.
it in those
That is
conversations.
really interesting. I would love to do a study on teachers and kink.
Yeah.
So maybe Nadej, you can help me because they're a sex scholar.
There you
Can we do research on this? The intersection between teachers and kinky people. I mean, listen, the thing is that kinky people are everywhere.
go. Mhm.
We're everywhere. We're everywhere you look. We're just hiding in the shadows, doing our kinky shit behind closed doors or closed doors that are also filled with other kinky people.
Yes, absolutely.
We very much like that. So how did you like, when was it? Actually, no, I want to back up because if you were the one that was like always asking questions about sex and blah, 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 did you feel like you were getting any additional attention from girls, or were you getting a lot of attention from girls or boys, or like sexual attention from either or any other gender?
Not at first.
Mhm.
Um, and of course, that wasn't the goal or anything. It was
Sure.
just
Yeah.
personal interest. But it wasn't until college when I started pursuing it more in depth.
Hmm.
So, and the next seed, I guess, in the puddle or in the puzzle is I had a friend of mine as I was going into college who basically said, "Hey, there's a student organization. It's based around student wellness. It was called uh, the name's escaping me right now, but it was an acronym. It was two acronyms put together. But they talk a lot about sexual wellness. I know you're interested in this. I think you would be great for it. So why don't you go to the Safe and Sexy event that they're hosting in February? Because it was right after I got to campus, and see if it's something you want to do." I go, and it was very small. It was on one floor of our like student center, and it was very there wasn't a lot of engagement going on. Very
Mm.
few students at the time, but it was also spread throughout like 3 hours, so it wasn't very big. And so I go and I'm like, this is pretty cool. I like what they're doing here. So I went up, I got an application, and I applied that day. And so I was admitted into because you had to take a class for it first. And I was like, okay, so this is actually something that means something. It's not
Mm.
just, oh, you go into a student organization and you're there for a couple meetings and you leave. You actually
Hmm.
had to take a credit course for it.
Wow.
And so I go in, I take that course the next semester, and I join the organization. And we had a local adult shop there that used to help with that Safe and Sexy event, goes out of business.
Oh.
And so we didn't have as many resources. We didn't have many people to talk to for it, or even just like an example of, hey, here is a dildo and here's how to use it safely.
Yeah.
And so I was like, how can I expand on this and leave my own little, well, it wasn't really with the intention of leaving my own little mark on it. But I reached out to a much larger retailer that was based in Columbus, and they decided to sponsor us. Now that was also without the administrative team knowing at the
Yeah,
time that
because
I
they for
reached out to
sure would have
them.
been like, no.
Well,
Bureaucracy. Sometimes you just got to ask for forgiveness.
yeah, and that was sort of my mentality when I found out that it was actually starting to go, and when it was finally starting to work out and everything. So the two administrative staff and then the grad student, they were like, okay, we appreciate you doing this. We weren't expecting you to do this, but you can handle it. So I was
We
on
don't
the,
want to touch this, so please keep going.
yeah,
Don't rope us into this sex stuff.
exactly. Yeah, but it ended up being super rewarding because I opened up that partnership. We were on a conference call with myself, our one administrator, and the grad student. They're like, this is Nate's baby. He's doing whatever he wants with it, and we'll just see where it goes.
Hmm.
The attendance from the first Safe and Sexy that I went to before I was a part of it was hovering around maybe 150 to 200 people that came in throughout those 3 hours. By February 2020, right before everything shut down, we were up over 600. We had a pop-up shop that made over $1,000 in sales,
Wow.
and we were in the entire ballroom. So it goes
Wow.
from this tiny little like initiative to something that expanded huge, and we had more programs with all the resources that we had. And I was going out to do Kink 101 talks with sororities, fraternities, and just other student
Hell
organizations.
yeah.
And I was doing that maybe minimum once a week. But
Hmm.
by around February, March, when those organizations are like, okay, we really need to get these credits in. They're like, okay, what's the more exciting one? Kink 101. I was doing 2 or 3 a week. And so that just became a time suck, but it was something that I loved doing. And that's how I sort of transitioned from history teaching into sexual wellness, because my degree is now in sexual wellness education.
Wow.
So it
That's
was a weird time because it all happened so fast.
yeah, and then COVID hit.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
what happened there? Like, I mean, like how far were you in your like graduation process by the time COVID hit too?
When COVID hit, that was my 4th year,
Okay.
and I went for a 5th year. So for those first 4 years, I was a history teaching major,
Mhm.
and then that 5th year, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do what I really want to do,
Yeah.
and so I moved on to the next part of my degree work, and yeah, it was just one more year where it was all COVID. But then that second semester of it, I had an internship with the same company that I got the partnership with. And
Yeah.
so I was doing that for 40 hours a week on top of my normal
Oh
job
my
that I was
god.
working. So, I mean, it was very rewarding. It was very fun. And
Very intense.
it was intense, but it was manageable. And
Yeah.
it was something that, because I loved it, it didn't feel like work.
Yeah.
Because my second job was bartending. I mean, that was a party every night.
Yeah,
Felt like I
yeah.
was still going out.
Yeah, yeah. Sex and
But
partying.
to a degree, yeah. But that's where, especially because I was known, and I go back and forth between if I actually liked being known as this or not,
Hmm.
but being known as a sex guy on campus, because I was the one hosting all of
Yeah.
those. And then going to the bar afterwards where I was working and bartending, people who were just in my program are coming up like, I remember you.
Yes, they did.
They think that they can ask me a lot more questions.
Yes, they did. Yeah, and I'm sure uh with a little alcohol in people, they felt a lot more at liberty to maybe discuss things that they want to do with you or like hit on you or, any
Yeah.
of those number of things.
Yeah. And I was impressed by during Dad's weekend, the one daughter that came up with her dad right there and asked me for my number.
Good for
I was
her.
impressed.
How did her
That
dad
was.
react?
I don't think he realized what was going on, because
Oh,
he
bless
was
him.
cut off about a half hour before.
Okay, she waited. She was like, "I need to get daddy drunk so I can get other daddy's number."
Yeah. And then we still never talked after
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Wow, what a journey. That's like a really uh, I think a lot of times people just kind of like fall into this stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's just this is if you like talking about sex and educating about sex, like educating yourself and others, then it's like there's so I mean now obviously like there are more and more people popping up every single day, but it's like there are so few people who can do this work that it's like yeah, if you feel comfortable talking about this and you have a voice and a message to share and you're educated, that is the fucking thing with me. I have a very big problem with people who have no baseline education and just like, well, I fuck a lot, so I can teach.
Hmm.
No, you can't. You have to understand other things other than your own personal experience. The reason that you go out and get educated is so that you have your own experiences, which are very, very important. I don't want to invalidate any of that because that is important because you also have educators that like they educate on things that they have never seen or experienced or have exposure to or worked with clients on or anything like that and I think that it can be like equally problematic. It's like you do need to be you don't have to do it for yourself, but like there's a little bit of a balance there. Like you can't just read out of a book. Like
Yeah.
go be in the spaces a little bit, even if you're just going to a talk by those people. Like be in the spaces, do the things. But yeah, I feel it's very important to like get the education. So like, yeah, there's room for everyone, but there's a responsibility, especially because we are so censored and shadow banned and we're buried basically. Like we can't have our voices that I feel personally that there's an extra responsibility that everybody does do their homework in this space. Like understand psychology a little bit, understand safety. If you want to talk about kink and BDSM, fan fucking tastic, but please do your homework outside of going to a dungeon,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely. And fortunately, there are enough, or not enough, but a multitude of dungeons that even I'm familiar with, but haven't attended. I've noticed an uptick in the workshops that they're hosting,
Yeah.
so that way they can get that education out there for folks who might be new to participating in these parties or might just have an interest and have no interest in going to the parties.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just completely detached from what they started out as, but it's really opening up that dialogue for everyone coming in. And I hosted one for Eastham once down in San Diego, and it was something where we had folks coming in who I had never seen at any of the parties just yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came into the next party that I was attending as well, and they saw me. They saw me doing Electro, and they're like, "I remember you
Oh,
talking
I
about
love
that," and that just
Electro.
looks like a lot of fun.
It's so much
So,
fun.
yeah.
I love Electro. I'm new in Electro, but it's so much fucking fun. If you have a chance to try Electro, do it.
The one that I need to learn a little bit more about, and I've had it used a couple times on myself, and I explored it a little bit with a partner as well, is use the tens units, because I normally just use like violet wands for Electro,
Okay, wait, what are the tens unit? Oh, the tens, like the back, like the ones that.
like the sticky
Yeah,
pads
yeah,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I used to have one of those, and then I don't know what happened when I moved to California. Because then when I rediscovered electroplay, I was like, wait, I used to have one of those. Where is that? Why can't I find that? So yeah, yeah. There and electroplay is. Let's talk about electroplay a little bit because it doesn't really get much exposure,
Oh.
which is why people are so excited about it when they actually get an opportunity to try it. Because, and I think it's kind of a part of a bigger conversation with kink and BDSM where like it's not all about pain.
Hmm.
I do not like pain. Pain, not my thing. Like I was in a scene with somebody and we were doing impact play and he does like he likes to dish it, fine. And he was great. Like everything he did everything right. So there was nothing wrong with him, but like for me the pain is like it takes me out of a subspace and now I'm like, okay, I like that level like can I take more? Do I want to take more? Do I want to give him a yellow? Do I want to give him a red? Let's see what that. Let's just keep going. Like, yep. This. Oh, okay. Like that's what that. Like I'm like not. I'm like in a space of like assessing what everything feels, which is also interesting and fun and beneficial. Not necessarily sexual, but not everything in kink and BDSM is sexual necessarily. Like there's a lot of psychology stuff that can happen too. So like I am not a pain person, but electro is so much fucking fun and it's a different feeling. A lot of people are like, "Ooh, that looks scary and that looks like it's going to be painful." And at a high enough level, yes, it can be.
Yeah.
It's like
It's definitely a surprise the first time it shocks you.
it's fun. I like the jumps. And I realized the last time that I was playing with it, something interesting that happens, and this was just my experience, and other people experience this sensation in different ways too. Which is again a lot of what kink and BDSM is exploring those sensations the same way that I was talking about impact. Like this is a sensation. What do I think about the sensation? Like what and different ones will have different reactions. So for that, what I noticed with electroplay is what my body does is like I will. It tenses the muscles up in a way, depending on the level.
Mhm.
It'll like tense up my muscles in a way that almost makes it feel the same way that it does when I'm having an orgasm. It doesn't feel like an orgasm, but the muscular not twitching because it's not twitching, but like that muscular tightening.
Okay.
It's like I'm like, oh, okay, like that's really similar to what's physiologically happening there too. So I'm like always my brain is always going.
That makes me wonder then if you're not so much into impact, if just the overall shock and jolt is almost making your body naturally brace for something. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my ongoing theory now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, this is why I love this shit because it's so like, ooh, what's really going on? Like, if
Mhm.
it's not just like straight up, this is pleasurable,
Yeah.
it is like, ooh, what's that? Like, oh, my body, like, oh, I can feel my body doing this. When I have an intense orgasm, my body does this too. Is that why this is like, this? Is that why my brain is liking this right now? Because it feels similar? Or like what you said, like, it's bracing. Like, what's that about? What is that doing?
Now that's still with like the violet wand or electro wand and
Yeah,
everything.
with
Okay.
like with with the wand, also with the flogger on it.
The silicone tip?
No, not I think they are made out of silicone. It's like a little hairy, not hairy thing, but it's a piece. So with the electro pieces, just so everybody knows, there's the main bit. I'll just call it like a drill. It looks like a drill bit almost, right?
Mhm.
And that's where the electric energy comes from. And you have different things that you can place on top of it. So you can have the little, like a little pointer, like you're saying. You could have something that has 2 prongs, which is really nice for nipple play, or like even necks and stuff like that. Or you can have this one that I'm talking about was like a flogger. So it looks like a flogger with the fringes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I call it a flogger. I don't know what the word for that would
I,
be. A fringe. A
I think it might
fringe.
just, at least the what brand that I'm thinking of, I think it was just called like the Electro whip or something like that.
Yeah, I
Which you
guess so.
definitely don't want to use these as a whip.
No, do
Because if
not.
that thing flies off, that's going to be a whole different
Wow,
issue.
bad, real bad, not good. But yeah, that one's a really interesting sensation. And even within all these different attachments, it's also a different electro sensation. So it's a really interesting thing, and I encourage everyone to try it if you have a chance to.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with all those kits too, I mean, they come with 4 different, at least the ones that I've seen, come with those 4 different glass attachments. And they're easy to just help build up everything. Like
Yeah.
the comb one.
Oh, I haven't had the comb one.
Yeah, the comb one is easily the most beginner friendly because it's surface area with so it's typically, the glass ones are typically filled with an argon gas. And with that, once that ignites is where the shock comes in, and it's just surface level static. And especially with the comb, it's just going to be over that larger surface area, so it's not as intense.
Yeah.
So, but then you go around to the one that's just like a pointed little nub.
Yeah.
And then that one can pack a lot more of a punch.
It
because it's
does.
such a singular unit.
But it starts really low too. Like if you're playing with somebody for the first time, ask them to start low, because you can't always trust that somebody knows. So always make sure that you're asking like, hey, I want to explore this. Please start on the lowest setting, and then, work your way up. And somebody who is facilitating, especially if you go to a play party, or, a dungeon or something like that, like, and they have been brought there by that community, then they will be doing this. And if not, that's a red flag. Please go talk to the person who's running things. But they'll start small, like they'll start slow on you. But yeah, it's a really interesting sensation.
Yeah, and definitely you need to have that build up too, just in terms of priming the body for those more intense sensations as well.
Yeah, with all types of sensation play, like you can't, with all play, full stop. Like forget about, you don't even have to be into kink and BDSM. Our bodies need to be prepared. It's the same thing as when you work out. If you work out and you just go straight for like pump and iron, you're going to hurt yourself. You go to a yoga class, you're not going into your strongest, hardest pose right away. You're working your body into it. And yet somehow when we get to sex,
it all goes out the window.
What the fuck? Like, I mean, we know why, society, P and V sex, and, patriarchy and all that shit. But like everything we do requires warming up.
Yes, absolutely. So
warm up the body, people. What was it? I feel like I was going to ask you something about electro play. Is that so with the glass pieces, is that why you see it like red in there? Is that the gas that's in there? Because you know how they turn red?
Yeah, there's some that are red, some that are purple. And I
want a purple one. No, I like red.
I think there's another color. I can't remember which one, but typically red and purple are the ones you're going to see. And so I don't really know what the difference is that causes the color differentiation, because I know it's argon gas in both of them.
Yeah.
But there's so many different ways to do it. My favorite attachment, though, is the power tripper.
Ooh. What's that?
The power tripper is one of the actual brand name ones, but it's a body contact cable.
Oh, I was going to ask you if you did that. When you put the plate inside you and then you love that. That's the best. It's so much fun. I was at a play party this weekend, and one of my play partners, he was called in to do the electro play. And we were outside and we were looking for an outlet. We couldn't find an outlet for him because like so many different things were like plugged in. So he had like this little battery pack, and it's just like a little battery pack generator thing. And it worked with the attachments. But when he went to go plate himself, I was testing it out for him before. He was like on the highest settings and I could barely feel anything. So the battery pack wasn't working. Like the little mini generator thing wasn't working. But then when he would go to change the dial or turn it off, he would fucking get zapped.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but it's kind of
funny.
And
he's a baby. He can't take it. He dishes it. He's a fucking sadist, but he can't take it.
Oh, I'm the same way. I'll admit I'm the same way.
You fucking sadist.
Well, I'm the way, like, if it surprises me, I'm out.
Yeah.
But that's why I stay away from metal bed frames if I'm doing that anymore. You'll get a shock in a place you don't want it very quickly. But yeah, with the battery pack, I could see why that would sort of fall off there. But
Yeah, it was a bummer because that is so much fun. Like, oh my God.
And
Yeah.
on the most intense setting, I don't know if you had it like attached to you or
No,
like
not
on
yet,
your
but I want to.
on the most intense setting, even if it's flush with your body, so it's not shocking you, it starts to vibrate. Because you have
Oh,
so much electrical current like going across your body in that one spot
yeah.
that it'll just start to vibrate, and you're like, is something wrong? Do I need to take a minute? Do I need to turn this off? And then you're
Yeah.
like, oh no, this is just what's actually happening right
Oh
now.
my God.
So
That's funny. I haven't tried that yet. I would like to. But we we actually the last party, we were all sitting just like in a circle, and this is when he had it plugged into the wall, so he was charged and I was next to him. And then we just like there were, I don't know, like 10 of us maybe that were like in a circle, and we're just like, okay, now you touch this one. And like, because what happens is that the main person is the conductor, and then if I am now touching him, now I am a conductor to you. And if now we stay connected, now you can conduct somebody else. So it's like a really fun little train. And so what was happening, because we were just like in a cuddle puddle pile. So all of us were connected in a circle. And there were two people that were doing acro yoga next to me. And they were like mostly fine when they were doing that because they were in movement. But like every now and then, like we'd get a little zap. But then they laid down and they were like snuggling next to us. And like this guy's hand kept touching my butt. So like we just both kept getting zapped. But like whatever, it was fine. Like everyone's just like it was the cuddle puddle area.
mhm.
But I was charged. So every time it was just like a slight movement or somebody rotated or whatever, just where his hand was and where all of us just were, I just kept getting like little butt zaps. And I'm like, sorry, dude. Like, he's like, no, it's fine. Because it was just his arm. So,
Mhm.
but that's the fun thing about that stuff. So wait, what is that one called?
The one that I have is called the Power Tripper, but it's
The
just
Power
a body
Tripper.
contact cable. There are
Yeah.
some that are like a normal rod that you can just hold on to,
Oh my God.
and which those are great, especially if you need to bail out of the scene very quickly.
Yeah.
But you don't really
Yeah.
need red or yellow or anything like that just yet. You're able to just drop it and be like, okay, we're done at that intensity. We're moving on.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's one that's more custom. But I don't know if there's another company that makes one like that
Yeah.
yet.
I haven't started to dig into those toys, but I feel like I need, even though I like getting it done to me,
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily get it to do it to other people necessarily. I mean, I would do it to other people, of course. But you could do it to yourself. So that's like, that was, yeah, that's why he got it. He got it to play with himself. Like, cause he was like, oh, this is a sensation that I like. And it's like the massage version of it too. Like it's stimulating for your body. That's also, there were a few women in there that they were saying, they're like, oh, this is like the thing I have for my face. Like a couple of them were estheticians or something like that. And they're like, yeah, it's the same thing. And like, I buzz my face with it.
Mhm.
So, it's got a lot of uses.
Yeah, the first time I had ever seen one was actually Bosley for hair. They were
Oh,
using it
yeah.
with the hair growth stuff.
Because it's a stimulant.
And I don't know if that's where the tech started or with the esthetician with the face sort of like hair everything, or if it started with the purpose of like sexual intent or what the real start of that product was. But I know that the actual unit does not change between each one,
Yeah.
which is hilarious to me. So, and with the contact cable, it's a lot of fun because sort of like how you described, where contact with others transfers the electrode to that person.
Mm-hmm.
It does that if you're holding metal too.
Yeah.
So I've used like I've got a little metal flogger that's no bigger than maybe my hand or something like that. But it's very easy to have that sort of like transition from, okay, I'm just going to brush my hand up to using something a little bit more intense and
Cool.
going back and forth with that.
Yeah.
Any sort of just regular chain would do the same. Or if you have like metal fingertips or something like that, it's just
I don't need them.
fun.
I have
Oh, there you go.
nails. But you do need it for that. I wonder if I put little like now I'm getting creative. See, this is what happens with kink and BDSM. Then you're like, I wonder what happens if I do this. What if I tried that? Because I was just thinking, like, I wonder if I put some sort of like metal material on my nails, like as a nail polish almost.
Like a little stud or something on the very tip?
Yeah, like little studs, and see if that would be like a like a more intense connector than just my skin. But if it's traveling through my skin, I don't know. I got ideas.
Let me know if that works because I'm very curious now.
I have all the salon stuff. So I'm like, let's stud stuff and see what happens. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with kink. It's like, it can be really playful. All of sex. You don't have to be a kinky person, but like it is this exactly what we're doing here, where we're like, oh, what about this thing? What about that thing? Like that's the fun and the joy and the pleasure of sex if you can allow yourself to get there. And it's like these are ways for adults to play with sensations and things that feel good.
Mm.
And a lot of that is kink, but people don't see like pulling hair as kink. That's kink. People don't see choking as kink. That's kink. They don't see, putting blindfold on. They're like, it's normal. That's kinky. Like all these things are kinky.
Mm-hmm. And that's why when it goes to the whole discussion of how do you define kink and everything, that is one of the things that at the beginning I struggled with a little bit when I was going through these programs because it's so customizable.
Yeah.
One thing something that's kinky for one person doesn't seem kinky to another.
100%.
And having that discussion with folks who still have that sort of almost binary mentality with it, it's an interesting way to sort of open up that mentality of, well, okay, whatever seems a step out of the norm for you, that's what you can consider kinky. And that's sort of how I've just sort of adapted that conversation. Like one thing might be kinky for you, but not for someone else, but you don't want to say, or you don't want to yuck anyone's yum.
100%.
I love that phrasing.
Yeah.
But so just how to have that sort of general conversation with it is a great starting point, at least from my experience.
And it is because it's so contextual based off of your community too. Because and I have this conversation with a lot of non-monogamous people and kinky people because we're in LA. And so LA is really open. There's a lot of polyamorous people. There's a lot of non-monogamous people, whether doing it consensually or ethically or whatever, or if they're doing it well is another story. But there are a lot of people that are in lifestyles. There are a lot of people that are exploring and open and free and blah, blah, blah. But that's not what you see outside of LA. And that's not even what you see outside of certain communities in LA, because I have plenty of friends that are vanilla and they're not in the sex space and they're not in this. And like the reality that like I work at a play party is like mind blowing. They're like, I don't, that's so much. Like, so you see people fucking? Yes, I do. So it's all contextual. And so then when you turn that into kink, somebody who's living in the Midwest, for example, might see something as kinky, whereas someone in LA is like, that's just normal sex. But so I love that you're framing it that way. And then I have a question for you, because this is something that I have come across that I'm like, okay, why do we do that? So kink and fetish are different things. Fetishes are something that you need to feel sexually aroused. Whereas a kink is something that's fun and you get pleasure out of, or pain, or whatever the sensation is, but it's not required. You don't absolutely need a kink in order to feel aroused and have a sexual experience and feel pleasure and orgasm. A fetish is something that you do. So with that, why do you think people still call things like feet kinks and tickle kinks, but fetishes and kink and tickle fetishes? Like, why do you feel like, because I read an article recently on a kink website that was calling it a foot fetish. And I'm like, it's not a fetish, it's a kink. You should be providing accurate information, because it's not like, why are we still calling it a foot fetish? Am I being annoying? Am I just like, girl, they just let them call it a foot fetish? I just feel like we're in a space now where like we can actually be educating people on the differences between kinks and fetishes and normalizing foot kinks, because a lot of people are into feet. A lot of people. So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. We're in a space where I think that we could have those conversations a little bit more in depth, so we can make that differentiation between the two. But I also think that there's still this almost block where we feel that we need to take baby steps for some individuals who might still be learning about it, because a lot of people have heard it as a foot fetish. A lot of people have heard it as just one way, and the only way to sort of spark that interest back so they can learn about it is to call it what they think it is.
Yeah, totally. And I definitely get that aspect of it. And I think if it was on like a Goop or a Glamour or like Men's Health, I would be like, yeah, of course you're going to call it that. Like that's mainstream. This was literally a kink He was like, I forget which one it was, and I don't really want to name it anyway, but it was actually like a kink website. And I'm like, why? You are the leader in this. But I'm like, is it just me? Like, is anybody in the space calling it a foot kink? I guess is my question. Because I guess I don't really hear people talking about it too much. And if I do, they're calling it a foot fetish. So I don't know.
I think it might also be just the overall singularity of it.
Yeah.
And that might be the biggest differentiating factor because, like, you don't know, or like for like a panty kink, for example,
Mm,
or like an underwear kink or something like that, or folks who have a kink for a certain type of material. So it doesn't really
mm,
matter what type of clothing attire it is, but just calling that singular item the fetish
mm.
sort of wraps it around a little bit more
Yeah.
for easy conversation. Maybe I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I mean, sort of going back to my first point there too. When I started with the Kink 101 courses, in order to get people in the door, it was 50 Shades of what. So
Yeah.
using that
Oh,
sort of like
totally.
triggering factor that they already know was
Mhm.
what got people in the door.
Yeah.
And so I'm maybe it's just me with that sort of mentality of okay, yeah, I've done that before, so I see if that's the reason.
Mhm.
But honestly, I'm not sure. It could very
Yeah.
well be something a little deeper.
I just wonder if that language, and I totally understand, especially from like a marketing perspective, like why you would do that 100,000%. And from like a comfort level and all of that. I just wonder if we're ever going to actually develop the language to be like, well, actually,
Mhm.
that's a kink, baby.
Yeah. Hopefully
I mean,
one day.
listen, foot fetish has a nice ring to it, but at least tickle fetish. I'm like, can we at least work on calling that a tickle kink? Because tickle kink sounds fun.
Yeah. I am a sucker for alliteration though.
Yeah, I know.
Like the more I think about it, I'm like, it might also be
It's
part
gonna
of
be a
it.
foot fetish forever, Arielle. Just get off of it. Get off on it. Oh man. Okay. So, what is something that you would like to clearly you know what I would like to leave people with. What would you like to leave? What is one thing that you wish people knew more about sex or sexuality or kink or like electro play or like anything that you want?
Everything about electroplay. Um, in terms of more of that electroplay side of things, my personal interest is just sensation play as a whole.
Yeah.
So like using sharps, whether it be knife play or other things like that, or I mean, blindfolded a credit card feels like a knife. You never know
Yeah.
never know the difference. Um, but understanding that the journey never ends is a
Mm.
big thing that I want to get across is you're always going to be learning. You're always going to make, or I shouldn't say always, but you're bound to make mistakes and learning from those mistakes, learning new techniques when it's something that you're really interested in, or just learning what you want or what your partner wants or anyone in a space that you feel comfort in wants. And knowing that you're always going to be learning something new. You're always going to be trying, you're not always trying something new, but might be looking for new ways to expand on what you already know. And that's just the most important part of a lot of it is knowing that that journey never ends.
Yeah, the journey never ends. It's especially when you're in a long-term relationship. That I'm big on sexual scripts and helping people rewrite their sexual scripts because we follow the same like it comes back to that guarantee, right? Like that this is what happens, I do this and then this happens and then we're done. And that gets really boring, especially over time, especially in a long-term relationship. But if we can have that beginner's mindset and that understanding that we're always learning and we're always growing and changing. And by the way, so do our tastes.
Mhm.
I hated mushrooms when I was little. I fucking love mushrooms now. Give me all them mushies. So, like you may have hated anal when you were in your 20s and now you're in your 40s and you're like, fuck yeah, do me in the booty hole. Like, you don't know, like things change and your partners change. And I love that openness and just like being okay with the change and being okay with messing up. I think those are like two real if you take nothing away from this episode, take that you're always going to be learning and growing and changing and that you're always going to fuck up and that's cool. Just repair.
What do they say? Like taste buds change every 7 years. So your sexual journey is just like your taste buds.
Actually, your entire body changes every 7 years, which is, I haven't heard that about your taste buds, but all of the cells in your body, they're all changing at a different rate. So some of the cells in your body, they change every few months. Others are going to change every few years, whatever. But by the time you are 7 years, that's like the longest that anything takes to to change itself over, basically. Like, we're kind of like snakes, but instead of one skin, we're just like shedding shit all the time. So it takes 7 years. And now, like, my body today is completely different than it was 7 years ago, because all of those cells have regenerated and they've all shifted and changed and grown. That's why when you do start picking up healthy habits, it takes a while, but then you are literally changing your physiology and your psychology too. This is my health coach nutrition shit coming in, but you do change every 7 years. And so it makes sense that your sexual needs are going to change every 7 years. Also, your hormones are changing and you're in different stages of life and all those things. So, like, stay open, stay growing, stay learning.
And it might be 2 years, it might be 5, it might be 7, it might be 10. Who knows?
It could be 2 weeks.
You never know.
It could be 2 weeks.
Might be overnight.
It might be overnight. It's true. Like, and that's the thing, this is why conversations about sex are so fucking important, because you might want to try something today and not tomorrow. You might like something today and not tomorrow. Your body might be open to something today and not tomorrow. So, like, we have to be constantly having these conversations, because we're different. We're different every day, especially if you're a person who has a period. Every cycle, like every stage of your cycle, is different. Your body, like, literally your body is different. It's growing, it's changing, it's getting bigger, it's getting smaller, its discharge is different. Like, shit be happening, yo. So yeah, ask all the questions. I love it. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram. I don't remember what my actual
We're
thing
gonna
is.
link it, so that's fine.
I changed it a while back and I can never remember what it is. And yeah, really, that's the only place that I have much of anything.
For now.
Instagram, yeah.
For now.
Never know.
Maybe you'll see him at a dungeon near you. I don't know. Or if
Never
you hang
know.
out in dungeons.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and doing this. This was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. If you like this podcast, like it, subscribe, send it to a friend, especially if you have a partner and you want to try Electro play and if you want them to hear us talking about the joys of Electro play. I feel like I need to name this episode something with like Electro play and foot fetishes. I don't know.
We'll workshop it.
We'll workshop it. We got to reel them in, Nate. We got to reel them in.
Absolutely.
You're the marketer. Tell me what to do.
What's the marketing turn here?
Help us out so we don't have to work that hard. If you want to have better conversations with your partner, go to birdsandbeesdon'tfuck.com. I have a yes, no, maybe list, which is an excellent tool. I don't remember when this is coming out, so I'm just going to plug all the things. I have a sensual empowerment and pole workshop on April 28th. That's in downtown LA. I'm doing 2 workshops at Zula Den. I'm doing one couples intimacy workshop on the 15th of May. It might be sold out by the time you hear this. I don't know. So if it's not, get it fucking quick. You can get tickets at Zula Den, and through me, I'll just tell you where. Follow me everywhere, Birds and Bees Don't Fuck. And then I'm doing a sensual movement sound bath with Sacred Sounds by Devin at Zula Den on the 22nd, which is going to be super fun. So we've got some somatic things, some movement things to get you into that stuff. And we will be doing some sensation play at the couples workshop, because I am a full believer in sensation play, and that is a huge part of sensuality. So